All right, so this is the 3-12 homework. Always start by putting your name on the top. All right, so let's make that a little bit different. Okay, so we are subtracting mixed numbers. And what we learned about today was that we can't always just subtract straight across because sometimes our first term might be smaller than our second term. But the first thing we're always going to do is we're always going to subtract those whole numbers. Oh, also, only do circled problems. Okay, so we're going to subtract 3 and 2. 3 minus 2 is 1, and I'm going to rewrite it as 1 2/3 minus 3/4. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to find common denominators. Okay, so I can do the whole, all right, 2/3 equals something over something, 3/4 equals something over something. Well, 4 and 3 both have a common denominator of 12. If I multiply, 3 times 4, I need to multiply 2 times 4, and I get 8. 4 times 3, 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite it as 1 8/12 minus 9/12. Now here's where a lot of kids will say, all right, I'm almost done. My answer is going to be 1 1/12. Well, no, because this term, when we're subtracting, that first term has to be bigger. Otherwise, we're going to get a negative number. All right, so we can't just subtract across because this number is smaller. So what we need to do is we need to look at our whole number. We're going to take 1 away from it. And we're going to say 1 is equal to 12 over 12. And 12 over 12 plus 8 over 12 is 20 over 12. And 20 over 12 minus 9 over 12 gives me 11 over 12. And that's my final answer. Okay, on to letter C. Whoops, there we go. Again, we're going to subtract those whole numbers first. So I'm going to rewrite it as 2 1/5 minus 1/4. I'm going to find common denominators. I know that 20 is a common denominator. And it's going to be 4/20 minus 5/20. If you need to take a couple extra steps to find that, that's fine. Whatever works for you. But we need to make sure that we have these common denominators. Next, I'm going to look at my numerators. Well, 4 is less than 5, so I can't just subtract across. This is where kids go wrong. This next step is the number one step that people make mistakes on. All right, so I'm going to take 1 whole away, and I'm going to rewrite it as 1 20/20 plus 4/20. And this is all equal to this. These are equal. Minus 5/20. So I can rewrite it as 1 24/20 minus 5/20. And I'm left with 1 24 minus 5 is 24 minus 5, 14, 19/20. And that's my final answer. Another thing, so you only have to do these 3 problems. If you need to take up all this space, you don't have to do D. Take up the space. Use the space that you need in order to be successful. Grab an extra paper too if that's helpful. All right, the last one, this is an 8. 8 minus 3, we're going to rewrite the problem as 5 2/3 minus 5/7. Okay, I'm going to rewrite it again with common denominators. 5 and something over 21. It's going to be 14 minus something over 21. It's going to be 15. Oh no, once again, 14 smaller than 15. So I'm going to rewrite it as 4 21/21. That's the same thing as 5 plus our 14/21. Same thing here, minus 15/21. So I'm left with 4 and 35 21st minus 15 21st. 35 minus 15 is 20, and I'm left with 4 and 20 21st. All right, on to the back. Mrs. Sanger blended 8 3/4 gallons of iced tea with some lemonade for a picnic. If there were 13 2/5 gallons of the beverage, how many gallons of lemonade did she use? Okay, so again, we got to think about what we're actually doing here. Would it make sense to add these together? So I'm going to add the iced tea with the entire beverage to find the lemonade, or I'm going to take the entire beverage and subtract the iced tea to get what's left over. That one makes more sense if we're finding something that's left over rather than a new total. Okay, so I'm going to subtract these numbers. All right, so 13 minus 8 is going to be 5 2/5 minus 3/4. And I'm going to find common denominator, so I'm going to say 5 and something over 20 minus something over 20. This is going to become 8. This is going to become 15. If you've noticed a pattern with this homework, every time this term's going to be smaller. Well, not the term, but the fraction part. All right, so I'm going to rewrite that as 4 and 20 20ths plus 8 20ths minus 15 20ths. So I have 4 and 28 20ths minus 15 20ths, which leaves me, if I subtract 28 minus 15, I'm left with 13. So I have 4 and 13 20ths gallons of lemonade. All right, last problem here. All right, so a carpenter has 10.5 feet of wooden plank. He cuts off 4 1/4 feet to replace a slat of deck and 3 2/3 feet to repair a banister. He uses the rest of the plank to fix a stair. How many feet of wood does he use to fix the stair? So we can do a bunch of subtraction because we're trying to find what's left. Whoops. What are we doing here? All right. So we can do a bunch of subtraction, but I also think that it's a little bit easier if we take these two numbers and add them first, because I always think adding's easier. If you want to subtract everything, by all means go ahead, but I'm going to add these two things first because we're taking those away from the total. All right, so 4 1/4 plus 3 2/3 is 7 1/4 plus 2/3. With this, we can butterfly real quick. So I have 7 and 3/12 plus 8/12. So I have 7 and 11/12. And this is what's used so far. So if I have now, oops, sorry, that entire thing wasn't on the screen. All right, so now if I have 10 1/2, I'm going to take away what we've used already. So minus 7 and 11/12. So 10 minus 7 is 3, so I'm going to rewrite it as 3 1/2 minus 11/12. And now instead of multiplying these together to find the common denominator, 2 is a factor of 12, so I can say 3 and something over 12 minus 11 over 12. Well, 2 times 6 will get me my numerator of 6. And then the last part is we got to take that 3, turn it into 2 and 12/12 plus 6/12 minus 11/12. Add them together, 2 and 18/12 minus 11/12. And I'm left with 2 and 7/12. That's how much he has left. This is for the